If you are a rider, this is a must-watch for you. Hello and welcome everyone. Today we're going to take a look into the world of bikers. In this video, we have a lot of examples of idiot bikers that ran from the cops, and some even didn't have cops to worry about, just their own judgment and skills. Let's jump right into it. A group of bikers came across a very committed cop that tried his best to corner one biker in a ditch. He pushes him all the way in the middle but gets distracted by the rest of the group and goes after them. The other guy finally makes his mistake after that. Just as soon as this guy pulled a wheelie, he turned around to the sound of a siren only to realize that there was a cop right behind him. However, that only prompted him to take his leave and shoot off. A pair of idiots on a bike were already running from the cops, and the video abruptly ends when they hit the pavement because they thought they could move with the agility of a fly. On the other hand, these guys have a lot of guts to be running on a bike smaller than both of them. They look almost cartoonish as they run from the cops on this miniature bike. Pretty sure that's illegal in a lot of ways. Here's one guy who made sure he went to trouble himself. He pulls a wheelie right behind a cop who is already being very tolerant of them and smacks right into him. That probably ruined the fun for everyone. Another group of rowdy bikers was intercepted by the cops that actually walked around in a frenzy themselves, thinking who to catch. In the end, they just went after the driver with a slingshot who was the most vulnerable to be caught. Here we have another guy who thought it would be nice to do his shenanigans in the dark of the night, but to his surprise, there was a cop coming the other way. He still saw him and instantly made a U-turn and came after him. These guys are all tough and whatnot right up to the point where the cops come. As soon as they see trouble, they begin panicking like there might be no tomorrow, and you can clearly see how they begin to act like clowns. A biker came into the camera frame while pulling a wheelie, but unbeknownst to him, there were cops there too. They quickly start running after the biker who manages to make a very narrow escape at the very end. Speaking of narrow escapes, this biker almost became roadkill for two other bikes that were coming from the other side and speeding down the two-lane road. He manages to dodge both of them in the nick of time. Here's another idiot that thought he could make it across the railway tracks at the speed of a turtle. He eventually dove off the bike and saved himself just because disaster struck. If only he'd thought any quicker. In a desperate move, a cop slightly nudged a runaway biker off his bike, thankfully at low speeds. The rest of the group quickly came running to help him. Who do you think was wrong in this, the cop or the biker? Before you decide to ride your bike, make sure that all the nuts and bolts of the bike are actually screwed on, unless you want to end up like this guy. Made in China has its perks, I guess? This road is known for bikers to speed on, and officers here are always on the prowl. When this group saw an officer come their way, all of them shot off immediately, except for one good guy who felt the brunt of the consequences. Thankfully, they let him go as well. Here is another biker that made sure to go to trouble himself. He loses control over a turn and rams right into a police car who will first take him to the hospital and then the police station. That cop car is swerving on the road for a reason. The reason? This guy pulled a wheelie just moments before and now has the officer all riled up and ready to arrest him. On mountain roads, this biker was speeding down the bends in a bike that is already not allowed on the roads. A few turns later, he presents himself to the cops who casually ask him to pull over on the side of the road. But he knows he's going to lose his bike, so he makes a run for it. These guys, on the other hand, just stopped for a while after a rash riding session and they thought they were in the clear, but across the road a bike stops and it's the cops. They know they're in trouble, so they immediately whip around and ride off. Here's a rider that decided to vlog his little stunt in front of the cops while being chased by them. All the cops can do at this point is just drive near him, hoping to pressure him into stopping, but he's nowhere close to doing that. This group of bikers, on the other hand, also had a close encounter with the cops. The biker in the front had his bike turn off, and when he stops, he knows if he doesn't get started soon, the cops are going to get him. This guy's been pulled over by the officers, and he records as a biker flybys them while pulling a wheelie. Another officer on the other side of the road is waiting for the rest of the gang to catch up, and he pulls out behind them as soon as they do. On the other hand, there are bikers that give this culture a bad name. As soon as the cops pull up to him and start telling him to stop what he's doing, he takes to using words and of the not-so-kind type. Here we have a genius who pulled a wheelie after coming out of a parking lot and forgot to see the cops. At this point it was too late and now he's gonna have to either pull over like a good guy or make a run for it. This time, we have a sensible biker who was pulled over by an officer on a bike. He had his hazards on the whole time, which actually confuses the people around him as the officer explains to him. But his reason was something completely different. This time, the bikers made a very crucial error when they saw cops coming their way. They waited until the very last second to make a move, and by that time, one of them was already caught by his shirt and brought down. If you're gonna run from the cops, just make sure that you actually know how to ride a bike and how to make a clean getaway. This biker goes slow, but at the end he himself crashed into a car and got himself arrested. At the request of a passerby, this biker performed a very harmless burnout. We all love those, but we also know that they're illegal on public roads. As he moved forward, the cops ahead ended up catching his friends instead of him. This guy found the worst time to pull a wheelie, and he only came down right in front of a cop who was sitting and waiting for any trouble that went by, and well, it looks like he found it. This officer stood right in front of a biker and tried his best not to let him leave, but the biker had other ideas and almost took the officer on a ride on his handles and front wheel with him. I'm pretty sure signaling other people to warn them about cops right in front of a cop is just like playing with fire, and this guy got himself burnt. The officer was doing what he was doing and immediately pulled him over. This rider was speeding down the road and throwing all sorts of flames with his bike, making loud pops and bangs. However, creeping up behind him was a police officer on a bike who calmly told him to stop or he won't have a problem catching him. Here we have another rider who had his hazards on in the middle of the road while going around heavy traffic. The cops pulled him over and started explaining to him that these only confused the public even more, but he was not having it. This guy knows that as soon as he goes ahead of the officer, he's toast because his bike doesn't have any plates on it. The officer first takes an on-ramp to the highway but comes back down from the off-ramp, and the inevitable actually happens. This is one unique way for cops to stop a motorcyclist. One of the officers hops onto his bike and takes a ride with him to the side just in case he tries to flee the scene. Turns out they'd already pulled him over before and were pulling him over for his aftermarket exhaust, which was actually stock. If you're a biker and you have the sudden urge to pull a wheelie in a public road in the middle of a residential street, just make sure that there are no cops around at the time, because this guy made that mistake and now has the cops behind him. This biker decided to pull a stunt in the middle of this intersection and went around and around doing a wheelie. Unfortunately for him, he didn't realize that there was a cop on the other side who turned his lights on to let him know he's coming. This biker tells her friend to stop pulling a wheelie in the middle of traffic because she knows it will have consequences. It was a matter of 5 seconds and there were consequences, in a white truck saying police. For this biker, the fun stopped even before it could start. As soon as his wheel went in the air, he looked behind because he noticed there were cops behind him. He instantly dropped the wheel into gear and disappeared. Police had enough with this one particular rider and they came in hot with a pepper spray. Luckily for the rider, he was wearing goggles and that protected him from the fiery sting. This food delivery guy knows he's in a lot of trouble and tries his best to squeeze through everywhere. He tries his best to dodge the police, but in the end it was all in vain as he was brought to the ground. This kind rider met a not-so-kind cop who was just angry at him for what he did. He knew he was at fault, and you can see the officer even trying to control his anger because he caught the guy speeding and doing a wheelie in the middle of traffic. We all know how cool flipping number plates can be, but this guy met a cop who wasn't so happy about it because in the end that is pretty illegal. The officer lets him know that he's not allowed and even told him this is what thieves and criminals do. A biker performing a wheelie on the highway slowly being chased by a cop who's gaining on him. Pretty sure speeding for the officer won't be necessary as the rider himself falls down in the middle of it. Now here's what you call persistence. The rider's trying his best to get away from the cops along with his girlfriend, and the cops aren't letting them off that easy. They go through all sorts of streets and the chase keeps getting longer and longer. This biker was riding on the opposite side of the road when suddenly the cops came over and tried to pull him to the side, but he was in no mood of losing his license today. Next up, we have another rider that was caught in the middle of a little performance. He was in the middle of a wheelie when a cop rolled up on him. Fortunately for him, he had speed and power coupled with an empty road. This biker had to ruin the fun for the rest of the group as well, as he pulled a wheelie and a cop coming the opposite way sought to bring him down. He turns around and rips his bite like there's no tomorrow. Looks like this guy's a lot of trouble because the road was blocked off just for him. No matter, he takes the other side and does a little off-roading to make a clean getaway. It doesn't matter what kind of bike you're on, if you're committed to make a getaway, then you can simply do it, even on a moped like this. This guy does it even after falling over. As you increase your speed during a chase, the probability of risk also increases, as this guy almost met death when the cop tried to scare him to pull over or slow down. But the man was committed. Here's another moped rider that seems to have forgotten the hang of his ride and bamboozles the cops by going around in circles and blowing kisses to them. Now that's what you call guts, or stupidity maybe. This officer rams his bike into the rider's bike in an attempt to throw him off and catch him. Even though that worked, the runaway rider takes it to his feet and starts running down the road in an almost cartoonish chase. As soon as these guys saw the cops, they immediately turned around and started running the other way because they knew that the cops were coming for them. Here is another rider that knows how to bamboozle officers. He goes left and right and left again, after which he made a final right, cutting the officer off. These bikers messed with the wrong cops, one of whom literally flies into the rider who had stopped on the side of the road. Now that's what you call commitment. West Midlands police released a wild bike chase video from East Birmingham. On March 25th, a biker evaded police in Stetchford, drove on the wrong side, ran a red light, and was stopped by a stinger at the end. This has to be the slowest chase out there. The rider takes his sweet time to evade the officers and simply cruises down the road. At this point, it seems that he's toying with the officers and stops on his own time. Here is another fun yet exciting chase in the streets of Brazil where everything is intense and the biker takes the officers in the narrowest of streets to make a getaway, but they hold strong. These officers successfully manage to stop one of the bikers after he hits them on the side, after which it turns into a foot chase as he tries his best to evade them by any means necessary. This biker is stopped on the side of the road as he watches his friends being chased by an officer. Must be a very fun experience for him. Everything was going smoothly until the cop turned on his sirens and lights, when all of a sudden everyone became confused and one of the bikers even fell off his bike. Do you think the officer is going to catch up to this biker anytime soon? Comment down below if you think cops should really get their hands on faster vehicles. Looks like we have another rider who's gotten himself into a very sticky situation right now. He tries his best to evade the cops and goes everywhere. Eventually, he runs out of stamina and simply gets arrested after a long chase. A couple of dirt bikers seem to have left the trails and were wreaking havoc on the public roads, and that's when two officers gave chase after them while everyone watched the scenes unfold in front of them. Do you really think it's worth running from the cops, and that too in such heavy traffic? Might as well just pay the fine and move on, unless you want to end up paying hospital bills instead. These guys were on their quads, running from the cops, when all of a sudden they reached a dead end, and that's where they decided to improvise. Now this is what you call putting your hand in a crocodile's mouth. This guy knows he's already in trouble, so might as well make matters worse for yourself, am I right? Here's a similar case, and now the cop has even more reason to chase him down. Not gonna lie, that does take a lot of guts and skill to pull off. It seems officers need a little more training to be done when it comes to running on their own legs, because it is a surprise how they absolutely managed to not catch a single one of these guys.